Welcome, guys, to our Tuesday morning podcast. I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a real estate broker here in Maryland, and we are going to cover a whole lot today with what's happening with the housing market all around the country. Actually, we are in the middle of the beginning of the spring market, and I have to say, here in Maryland, it's pretty disappointing. Not a whole lot of activity happening, not a lot of inventory, though inventory is rising. Want to do a quick shout out. Our thumbnail we had, I don't know, if Joe, maybe you can pull that thumbnail up. It's kind of interesting because we're in tracking all across the country of where home prices seem to be crashing the most. It's directly related to supply and demand. Well, we know that all across the country, the demand is down. In fact, we're dealing with such low demand that, and we'll cover a lot of this today, that over 70% of the real estate agents didn't sell anything in 2024. 2025 is not starting out much different, but it was kind of interesting. A little detail here. We had it backwards. We had the supply up, as you would think that supply's up, demand's down, but here on the scale, what we are tracking across the country of where home prices are really crashing, it really is because the supply is the heaviest and the demand is actually the weakest. So interesting little twist. One of our viewers said, "Hey, your thumbnail is backwards. We had it the other way," which seemed to make the most sense from a visual standpoint, but not really the right way to compare it. We're going to go for about 2 hours today. Usually these podcasts are from 10 to 12. We'll take your comments and questions. Keep them coming. You can chat it in the live chat. Who knows, if we get some time, maybe we'll even invite a caller in if someone wants to talk about what they're seeing or their experience in the housing market right now. I want to just remind everyone that we are now posting on basically all of the social media platforms. So if you like TikTok, we're there, and Instagram, of course, Facebook. And so we are publishing short videos, sort of recapping our podcast throughout the week. So that is something that has been growing. We love to have you follow us there if you'd like to get shorter content. And so you can subscribe to us or follow us on your favorite social and audio platform. We do broadcast to all the major platforms: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, you name it. We're going to be talking about what I'm seeing dealing with transactions with real estate agents. I have to say, I'm seeing some very disturbing things happen out there with listing agents. Since this NAR ruling, and unfortunately, some of the things that I'm witnessing are very harmful to buyers. Some of the behavior of some of the agents that are out there, I'm going to go over. If you're a buyer or seller, you'll want to pay attention to this. We're going to go over, I'm going to do it sooner than later so you don't have to go through the whole podcast to get to that point. But they're certainly, I think the intent of the Department of Justice, I don't know what the intent of the plaintiffs were other than getting their lawyers rich with the lawsuit. But the changes that have been made to sort of mask on the MLS what a seller is offering, if any compensation, to a buyer's agent is now not transparent. And that's putting that in the hands of the listing agent to be ethical. I'm going to talk about a current situation that I just experienced, and hopefully I will be able to bring some light to, if you're a seller, what you should be making sure is happening out there, that you get the fair shake and the proper offer, that you see all offers. And if you're a buyer, what you may need to educate your agents, your buyer agents, because they're so damn confused on, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, what they're allowed to ask, what they're not allowed to ask. And no one wants to be, in trouble. I mean, nobody wants to, to be in violation of a federal judge, and have the Department of Justice knocking on your door because you're doing something wrong. But at the same point in time, I think the industry at large has really done a terrible job of rolling this thing out. And I'll explain as we kind of dive into a listing agreement that we use here in Maryland. Every state's different. We have listeners all across the country. I would encourage you to, if you're listening, balance what I'm going to show you and tell you against what your state form actually says, and make sure you're having a transparent conversation with your listing agent. Not all agents are bad guys. I mean, this is, it's so frustrating for me to come on and, talk about the industry at large, but it's a mess. Obviously, we have a home shortage problem still. We're going to go over that. Sales have dropped off a cliff. I mean, it's we're really, like I just said earlier, the demand's down, interest rates are up. The spring market's really not that happening. If you are a buyer, and what we're seeing is the buyers now have cash. A lot of them they're downsizing. They're making a decision to, either give their home to a family member and buy something smaller, or they're choosing a lot of different creative ways to sell and buy. Selling is not so much the problem as buying. But as a result of the cash buyer and exuberance, at least in our area, we're still seeing ridiculous offers that are happening in the first 2-3 days. Again, we'll talk about some of the worst markets. We have a poll. If you guys want to vote the poll, we can pull it up here. It really wasn't a trick question. Maybe some of you were Googling it, but we're going to go over, the unhealthiest markets in America. See if you're living in one of those states. But the question was, where do you believe the unhealthiest housing market is today? You can continue to vote on that. We'll check it. 81 votes. So maybe we can get that up before we cover this area to see who was right and who's wrong. We put our own Baltimore, Columbia, Towson, Maryland area. That's the markets that we serve here at Sachs Realty. We serve like 9 primary markets in and around Baltimore and D.C., which brings me to the next point. If you're in Maryland, we'd love to talk to you. If you don't have an agent, we could certainly represent you. If you're looking to buy or sell in Maryland, we would love the opportunity to do business with you and help you navigate this market. Maryland still, most areas, we're still seeing a pretty strong demand. If you're selling, if you're a buyer and you can't compete, don't look at houses that are, if you're a cash strapped buyer, which a lot are. We're going to go over those stats. My recommendation is don't run out and look at the house the first week on the market, because the agents are really utilizing the exuberance, and they can play their little market manipulation in the beginning, because they can say things like, we have multiple offers, put your best foot forward, do this, do that. You can't really prove otherwise if they set an offer deadline for a couple days from now. And what are you going to do? You have to kind of you can call their bluff. But in a lot of cases, they're not bluffing. They really do, and they're working it, and they're manipulating it, and they're trying to go back and forth and bump it higher and higher and higher and higher and get you to eliminate all your contingencies. That's what listing agents are doing right now, if they're experienced. And so sit it out. If you're a buyer that, where, you can't overpay, which is, it's just disgusting that I'm even having this conversation with you right now. That's what this spring market is all about right now, at least here in Maryland. Demand is still down. I mean, it only takes a couple. So we see a hot property that goes on the market. If it's move-in ready, it's a desirable area. You're still seeing maybe 4 offers. or 5 offers, not 25 or 30 offers on most properties. Now, if the agent underpriced the property, grossly underpriced it, yeah, you may get 15 or 20 offers. But if it's priced pretty much where the comparable sales are, and it's moving, like I said, it checks a lot of boxes for many people, the masses, move-in ready, that kind of thing. They are still getting 4 or 5 strong offers, not 15 or 20, but they are getting multiple offers. So we'll dive into that a little bit. Mortgage rates. A lot of people were expecting or predicting that mortgage rates would come down. They're not. They're still very sticky. But here's where the but comes in cautioning you if you've been on our channel listening to our shows before. We're in an average 50-year or 5-decade average of mortgage rates. It's not a bad rate to be at 6 or 7% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. The problem is that's not where the houses are priced. So that's why we're seeing the buyers right now, the demand is way down. I'm not trying to tell you demand is up. We are a very fragile market, even here in Maryland. We're seeing the spring play out with this scenario that I just described. But don't think that is going to last, because it's not. And because once we start to see inventory come up, and it's coming, it is coming. I'm going to show you some charts from a friend of mine, Lance Lambert. He has Resi Club. We're actually podcasting. That will be released on Saturday. We're talking about, from his perspective, what he's seeing from the data, but I do have a couple of his charts that I'm going to go over today to show you, prove to you where inventory year over year is rising. We're just not seeing, we haven't seen a lot of the what is coming show up yet. And I'll give you an example. In Maryland, we're seeing tons of layoffs. I'm going to play a little clip here and show you what they're already talking about in Maryland. They're predicting recession like big time, because of the federal job cuts, and it's going all across the board now. It's hitting, Department of Defense, which I don't think people would have expected. But Doge is going through everything. They're even going into Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, big executives, top executives in these government-sponsored enterprises that are actually ran by the government. They're in conservatorship. They're talking about privatizing them again. Fannie and Freddie, or who's really backing the conventional mortgages in the country. A lot of them, more than 50%, are said to be, backed by Fannie and Freddie. I've heard people say it's as much as 70%. But mortgage rates are really putting that pressure on our first-time buyers. We've seen where 38, 39-year-olds, that's the average first-time buyer now in 2024, according to the National Association of Realtors report. Not that long ago, it was early 20s. We're going to look at the Housing Affordability Index, which is going to get us to, where's the worst healthiest housing market, where it's just hard to afford anything unless you're a cash buyer. We're also going to take a look at unemployment. It is rising, like I just said, in Maryland. Let's go ahead and let's play that Maryland clip here. We'll just start us off with that, because this is something that if you're a Maryland seller, you need to pay attention to.
On the way to the federal workforce, Friday, Small Business Administration's chief announced around 2,700 positions will be cut. That's 43% of staff. For weeks now, we've been taking a look at the local impacts of these layoffs. And this morning, a new report reveals these cuts are creating a higher than average recession risk for Maryland. 7 News' Kelly Lynn is live for us in Bethesda, taking a closer look at that report and asking a finance expert how Maryland residents should respond to this.
How do they respond?
Indeed. I looked at that 6-page report, which comes from the global credit rating agency Moody's ratings. And I also checked in with
I
a
don't think
finance
she knew,
professor at the University of
said to
Maryland,
remember
College
that.
Park, to find out what he thinks about this and what he recommends that Marylanders do. Let's start with the report, though. That report showing shrinking the federal government is creating a bigger recession threat to Maryland than any other state in the U.S. The report notes federal wages account for more than a fifth of the gross income in the state's counties. Earlier this month, the state lowered its revenue forecast to account for the federal layoffs. The assessment also points to the fact that Maryland was already struggling with a growing budget gap before the job cuts.
All right, so hang on a second. So the growing budget gap was $3 billion. So that was the gap before any of the layoffs. So yeah, you want to think that maybe, I don't know where all the spending is going, but this is what they say is going to happen or could happen, and pensions, I think they're talking about here.
University of Maryland clinical professor David Katz. He is a professor of finance, and he explained to me how tumbling stocks and reduced consumer spending can affect the timing of a possible recession.
If your 401k, for example, is now worth somewhat 10% less than it was last month, you might want to save more and spend less, which would only contribute to a recession arriving sooner.
That's good. So you save more and spend less. So this is a great message that, I mean, we probably should have thought about that all across the country, because we're talking about some of the highest consumer debt we've ever seen. But when we're, kind of taught at the top that that doesn't matter, we'll just keep spending that. But now what's happening is, so we've known that this is no surprise that affordability has been terrible in the United States, all across the country. That we've had inflation, that the way that they sort of bake the cake is that you don't even know. I mean, 9.1% inflation when we knew that products were 40, 50, 100% higher year over year, but they're saying 9.1%. We have to do something. Now we're getting it down, whatever. People know we have shrinkflation. Go buy a box of cereal. It's a thinner box. It's more air, and I guess to protect the little morsels from breaking in transit. But come on, nobody's pulling the wool over our eyes. We've seen housing costs exceed 50% of your income, whether you're renting or buying. That's not sustainable. But what we've been missing, which is the very interesting part here, is that most of you all, maybe not you, because our audience is very smart, but mostly everyone, they get their information from mainstream media. And now they're saying it. That's the difference of what happened in the housing market crash of 2008. They came out, the Baltimore Sun came out with a headline that said the overpriced Baltimore housing market. Boom. If the media tells you it's overpriced, people say, well, I don't want to buy anything that's overpriced. We haven't been hearing these things. So what's happening is all we've been told for years now, the job market's great, the housing market, buy now. It's, if you don't buy now, you're never going to have an opportunity. And now when we start hearing, if this is all over the news, which it is, you think Marylanders are going to stop spending money. Since this article, this newscast, I've already seen in driving around in my travels, I'm out and about every day, where businesses backed off. I went to a local Chinese restaurant last night. It was empty. It's a very popular place, great food. It was empty. We're going to see it now. So now we're going to start to see it. It does take time for these things to catch up. All right, let's dive in here. I want to go over something that was very upsetting, that experience that I had in the last couple of days. But first, I want to start off with showing you that, and this is an Inman article here. I want to kind of go over this a little bit, because before we dive into the agent side of things, I want to just kind of talk about what they're reporting to agents. Inman is a subscriber base. I pay to belong here. They do a great job of advertising for I guess their biggest broker supporters in the country and making them look great. They say a lot of things that to me don't make a lot of sense, but I listen to it all. And, I try and bounce my own beliefs and experiences off of what's being said. Because, again, if you listen, what people are being told, and the ones with the bigger microphones, like the, mainstream media, they have a bigger reach than somebody like me. And then people will talk about it, and they'll tell people, they'll sit in the barber chair or whatever, and they'll tell everybody what they just heard. Agents are kind of the same thing. Well, if we can get this information into the hands of the agents, well, surely they're going to tell people, they're buyers and sellers. So always look at this kind of thing from like a different lens, try and see it from the aspect of who's reporting it, who's speaking it, what I see, and what I believe. The 4 million home shortage. Now, I do believe we are in a home shortage. We're not in a home shortage. We're not in a housing shortage. We have plenty of inventory. It's called ghost inventory. Builders are sitting on it. They're bleeding out right now with their, a lot of them, not everywhere, but the Sun Belt. We're going to really talk about that with Lance on Saturday. But we are seeing that one of the reasons why we're sort of like dealing with the exuberance in a small pocket of tight market areas is because of the inventory. So we do need more home inventory, but it's not what they say needs to happen, in my opinion. More people own multiple homes. More people own Airbnbs. We're going to go over some stats. They're not making money. A lot of people are not making money on their Airbnbs. They're abandoning them. Some are turning them into long-term rentals, but a lot of inventory, right? So we'll get into that. But 4 million home shortage, how the industry can unlock. Where are my keys? I don't have my keys. As real estate professionals, policymakers, and communities collaborate to find solutions, Kendall Bonner writes, they create a future where housing is more accessible and affordable. So I got a couple highlights here. According to Realtor.com report in 2024, new home construction outpaced household formations for the first time since 2016. Plenty of new homes. The lack of new construction homes over the past decade isn't the only reason why we have supply problems. Existing homeowners are just not moving. Not only are they trapped by low interest rate on their existing home and financial weight of increased home prices, but there are additional considerations like the rising cost of property insurance and canceled policies. All true. Well, now we have, according to the Joint Center for Housing Studies of Harvard University, from the Great Recession to present, homeowners' insurance prices have increased 74%, while home prices have increased more than 40%. Some areas, most areas in the last 5 years, the house prices have doubled. 100%. But they adjusted this for inflation. Housing gap supply gap report also comments on the decreased household formations. Very true. An estimated 1.6 million expected Gen Z and millennial households did not form in 2024 to various factors, including lack of affordable housing, no savings, not being able to afford groceries, car repairs. Working 2 jobs. The median age for homeownership, I told you that, 38 in 2024. This really gets me here. Solutions to unlocking inventory crisis. We need proactive local and federal housing policies, regulations, and incentives. Looks like we need more government regulations, according to these people. That's where we screwed up. We need less regulations. We need less incentives. I mean, let's just keep giving incentives to get people strapped to debt. What are we supposed to do? Everybody wants universal basic income and a stipend and a house. We need streamlined housing production. Whoa, this is exactly what we need. We need AI to streamline government approvals to speed up housing production. What we really need to do is have them sitting in the office instead of at home working. Back in the day when I was getting building permits, I could walk in the morning and leave with my building permit. You can't do that anymore. It takes 2 weeks to log something in to where you can even pay for your permit. So you got to go on the portal, you fill it out. We need innovative mortgage solutions. This one really gets me. One strategy is to improve financing options and affordability programs to help buyers overcome the down payment hurdle. 30%. First-time buyers can get grants, and sellers can give them closing cost assistance. What we really need to do is make it even get them in more trouble to where they have zero skin in the game. Assumable mortgages allow buyers to take over sellers' low-interest loan and unlock more listings by providing an attractive option for buyers facing high rates. So if the house is being sold has a 2.75% mortgage, but since they bought it, the home price has doubled. Where are they going to come up with the extra cash? They're going to give them $200,000. Second mortgages are expensive and not practical. I don't know how that will work. You're going to love this one. Maybe we're going to become like Japan. Beyond these options, the industry must also embrace longer-term and alternative mortgage structures to increase affordability. 40-year mortgages, 40-year mortgages reduce monthly payments, making homeownership more feasible for middle-income buyers, while lease-to-own programs offer a path for renters to transition into homeownership over time. The banks are going to get paid. It's already the way they work their interest. The banks get rich off of you. You have to live there for 15 or 20 years before you really start buying down your principal balance. All you got to do is go to Google and type in amortization schedule. for a mortgage. Don't even worry about taxes and insurance, but just put a price in there for a mortgage and then see what the schedule tells you of how much at 6.5% or 7%, 30-year or annual percentage mortgage rate over 30 years, and look at your payments and see what actually goes to the bank and what goes to your balance. And then look at how long it takes before it flips to where actually more goes to your balance than it does to the bank. Any comments that we want to address before we go into talking about the real estate agents in the industry and what we're seeing? Dan, thanks for the question. Hey, Todd, what's your thoughts about the fraud with delinquent mortgages for FHA? You know, when what I hear about and going in, and there's a lot of controversy as to what's allowed, what isn't allowed with an FHA loan. It is meant to be for your primary residence. Are there a percentage of mortgages that maybe could be considered fraud? Probably so. There are stats out there that if you're not living in the house as your primary residence, where you're living in a primary residence, but you bought this other house for an Airbnb or a rental, if things get tight, you're going to not pay that. You're going to pay your primary residence. You're not going to pay your second house, your rental property. If they find out that you didn't live there for X amount of time that you're supposed to, what are they going to do about it? Probably nothing. I don't know. Maybe they'll use this AI to kind of find these things out. Run your address with your driver's license or whatever, your voter registration card. I don't know. Run whatever. Figure out, are you staying in this house that you signed affidavits for 12 months? Did you ever move in? We'll see. I mean, but I mean, they're not really doing much about the people not paying anyway. It seems like I read that you are not allowed to Airbnb an FHA mortgage, a house with an FHA mortgage. Pretty sure I saw that on FHA on their site. I heard a very prominent investor coach not that long ago on a podcast tell everybody that that's what they should do. Oh, it's great. You can get these FHA loans. You get a little, little money, little skin in the game, low down payment, lower credit requirement. You can Airbnb that. And he was also saying things like, put 9 bedrooms in it or whatever, because that's, I don't know, any zoning that would allow you to take a 4-bedroom house and turn it into 9 bedrooms and rent rooms and all the craziness that's being taught out there. But yeah, I mean, might be an issue. I don't know. I guess if they are going to start coming after people, but probably not. When you buy a government-owned property foreclosure, like if you go to HUDHomestore.com and one of my agents has a buyer that wants to buy it and they accept the offer, the broker, I have to sign an affidavit saying that, they're buying this government foreclosure. They should be living in it. I can't control the buyer and what they do, but they want everybody to sign these forms. Will they enforce it? Somebody told me one time, oh, yeah. They go back and they check your driver's license to see if you ever updated the address or what have you. And I'm like, okay, I mean, maybe. We need higher standards for home loans. 10% down should be the minimum. We also need higher standards to become a realtor. I was shocked at how easy it is to become a realtor. Man, I'll tell you what, it's guys. Unfortunately, I think it's going the other way. You have 71%. Well, let's look at this. Let's look at this article here. Also, Inman, 71% of real estate agents didn't close any deals last year. There are 1.5 million realtors nationwide, but less than a third of them are actually doing deals. 30% of agents do all the business. 71% of agents did not close a transaction last year, but not all realtors are in the business of closing transactions. Well, I guess that goes pretty much. They'd like to be. So that number could be a bit misleading. Well, how? How's it misleading? Why be a realtor and pay dues, belong to the National Association of Realtors, belong to the State Association of Realtors, belong to the local board, and not have intentions? They're not in the business of closing transactions. Still, the share of respondents who would recommend being a real estate agent hit an all-time low in 2024. Do me a favor, don't get your real estate license. We don't need any more competition. We have 74% of them aren't doing any transactions. We're quite happy with it that way. We'd like to be the 30% that do the business. I mean, I don't know what the business is going to look like in a year or two. So you may spend a lot of money and there may not be any more agents. Who knows? Or it may be a complete different system out there. You're like, yeah, that's too much work for the money. You know, that juice isn't worth the squeeze. But until then, all right, couple more things here. Still 50% of all respondents said their business hadn't seen much change as a result of the National Association of Realtors antitrust settlement last year. Another 38% said that their business had been negatively impacted, while 5% said it had been positively impacted. At the same time, nearly half of respondents, 45%, said most sellers in their area are offering a buyer agent fee up front, while 22% said most sellers are leaving it open-ended, and the remaining 33% said that they were seeing a mix of approaches in their area depending on seller preference or the agent that's working for them, because they're the ones that have the ability to cook the books. What we have done here, ladies and gentlemen, is we have taken a system of transparency and we have now hidden things that, in my opinion, are very harmful to the seller, to the buyer, and to the professional agents that are trying to do their job. So I had a situation recently, this past weekend. Been working with buyers, husband and wife, great people. We've been looking at houses. We have a checklist, box to check the boxes, as everyone should. Does this property meet my needs if I'm going to buy it right now? And I'm going to pay top dollar. I certainly want to make sure I'm getting what I want. You can't blame them for that. Want to put an offer in on a house. What a buyer's agent, and listen up, if you're a buyer's agent, listen up. If you're a seller or a listing agent, you ought to listen up too, because I think y'all are either confused or being taken advantage of, or taken advantage of other people. One of the things that I have to do now, because I need to write an offer for my buyers, because with the new ruling, it was educating sellers with these big flashing lights saying commissions are negotiable. You don't have to offer buyer agent compensation. You just saw where I pulled it up there where they said a large percentage of hasn't changed. Sellers are still offering it for a lot. That's been my experience too. But if you're a seller and you're filling out a listing agreement, you have an ability to say, negotiate with your listing agent a fee for them to work for you, just sell your house, which is completely understandable. The way it had happened before, and still is in that fee that you negotiated with your listing agent, you were giving them also as part of that authorization to cooperate with a buyer's agent or a sub-agent. We're going to keep it simple. I'm not going down the weeds on this, but a buyer's agent. You sign an agreement with your buyer's agent, buyer broker agreement. They're going to show you houses the way it's been done for a long time. In that listing agreement, they give the seller gives the authorization in writing, in an agreement, to pay a buyer broker agent, buyer's agent company, X amount of dollars or percentage of what the listing broker is charging you or collecting. Now, it's expressed in the agreements nationwide that they don't have to do it that way. Sellers don't have to do it that way anymore. The seller can elect to do it that way, the way it had been done for 100 years. Not 100, however long buyer agency was. Here in Maryland, it's since I think 81. Seller still paid the other agent, but the other agent didn't work for the buyer. In theory, it worked for the seller. Again, I don't want to go down these weeds. But for 100 years, the commissions were divided up. Now the seller can say, I'm going to negotiate with the listing agent to do their job, but I'm not going to allow the listing agent to pay a buyer broker. I'm going to make the buyer broker ask for it, or the buyer ask for it. Because if they don't ask for it, I don't want to pay it. Because a lot of times the listing agent, if the buyer's broker doesn't ask for anything and they've been authorized to share the fee that they got, but the buyer doesn't ask for it, the agent wants to keep all that money, the listing agent. They want to keep it all. They don't want to give any of it back to the seller. They want to keep that. So that's screwed up because the contracts, at least our contracts in Maryland, aren't clear as to what happens with the money if it's not requested. But I know one thing is clear, is that when a buyer broker calls the listing agent and asks the listing agent if there's buyer broker cooperation from the listing broker, per their agreement with the seller, they're obligated to tell me and not play games with me. So Sunday, I call the agent and I say, hey, my buyers want to write an offer on your listing. Offer deadline. We want to hit the deadline. Is there buyer broker compensation? My buyers want to know this. Is there buyer broker compensation from your brokerage where you're authorized to cooperate on the fee that you charged? And he said, well, there could be. Okay. There could be. Yeah, I just tell everybody, just ask for it. I am asking. I'm asking you. In your agreement with your seller, are they giving you authorization for you to cooperate with whoever buyer broker it is, and how much is it? This game went on and on and on and on and on. Well, let me ask you something. I know, some agents, they ask for it. Some agents don't ask for it. Some just put it in the offer. Well, I have to know who to ask for the compensation. If I assume that my client has to ask the seller to pay towards the compensation, and they're already paying you, they're just gonna throw my offer in the garbage can. Or are you really telling me that you'll throw my offer in the garbage can? Now, maybe he didn't know after 500 transactions in 5 years. Maybe he didn't know. Possible. I'm going to share with you guys here. This is exclusive right to sell, residential brokerage agreement. This is the new one. This is updated 10/24. See right here? 10-page document. Goes over all kinds of stuff. Giving me authorization to put it on the internet. Blah, 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 blah. Number 15, authority to cooperate with and compensate other brokers. What I would say is if you're a seller, you have to first decide what kind of games you're going to allow a potential agent to play. Authority to cooperate with and compensate other brokers. Broker is authorized. This is the listing broker to cooperate with other brokers or subagents of brokers and or brokers retained by prospective buyers to represent buyers' interest. Buyer brokers. In this paragraph, cooperate means sharing information on the property and making the property available to other brokers for showing to prospective purchasers. Seller consents to brokers' cooperation with and compensation of subagents or buyers' brokers. So here's what it's saying. It's saying you, the listing agent, have to provide information on the listing, your seller's house. You're not playing games with them. You're not hiding documents. You're not preventing them from getting access to the information. This is them telling you, share this house, share the information. And now it's saying, and I'm giving you the authority to share a fee. Not there could be, there couldn't be, there may be, there isn't, there is. Broker shall pay to any subagent who has earned and entitled to compensation X amount of dollars or X percent of the sales price, plus, if it applies, any months of ground rent. Broker shall pay to buyer broker who has earned and is entitled to compensation, the same thing. I'm not going to get into differences. A subagent is somebody that is not representing the buyer, they're representing the seller. I didn't want to get down the weeds on this because it's too confusing. just understand one thing. If you have a buyer, if you, the buyer, sign an agreement for representation with a buyer broker agreement and have an agent representing you, and the listing agent has filled this out with an amount, that is what you tell them. The seller's acknowledging here that they understand that compensating subagents or buyer's brokers is optional. Now, the new ruling, you don't have to pay anything to the other side. You can make the buyer pay for their own agent. This has always been the case in the contracts that I've seen. The sellers always had to do something like this, authorizing the listing broker to cooperate. But now we don't see this anywhere. We got to ask. We don't have anything that we can protect our buyers with. We don't have anything now to keep these agents straight up. We got to go off their word. And if an agent's going to play games with you and not tell you, now eventually this agent did tell me, but there are agents out there that could be hiding this information. And I'm going to go one step further and say that I don't think this agent was trying to be malicious or malintent. But it was a frustrating conversation of game playing that was unnecessary. There would have been a lot of agents, buyer agents, that would have not pushed back. There are a lot of people that don't know. And if you're hiring that buyer's agent that doesn't know or doesn't have good training or isn't a broker, doesn't understand these agreements, which is pretty shitty, actually. These agreements are not very strong. They do leave a lot of, like, what does this mean? But these are the kinds of things that we're subjected to when we have these paywalls that are up. So the more this kind of stuff happens, I have to say it's got to be happening out there. I'm not the only one with the limited little bit of business. I don't do a whole lot of business. I try and push leads to my agents for the most part. Unless it's a real strong referral, I manage it. I stay involved. I pay attention. I help with the people that are like YouTube leads that are coming in. You guys are reaching out. You're moving to Maryland or whatever. I can't. I have a lot that I'm doing, but so if it's happening to me with a little bit of business, what is it happening when 74% of the agents aren't transacting, didn't do one transaction in 2024? What does that mean for the 30% or the potential? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, that real estate agents, a lot of them are not held in high regard. This is why I'm starting to really think, a couple months ago, a year ago, I don't know, what was his name? John Kutzmita, I think his name was. He came in, flew in from, I think he lives in Hawaii or somewhere, who lives in Hawaii? And he came in, we podcasted together. He was partnered up with Brent Johnson. I've had on my channel a bunch of times. Brent lives in Puerto Rico. He has the dollar milkshake theory. Anyway, if you haven't watched any of our videos, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you follow our channel, you probably know who I'm talking about. He came in and he said, you know what? He said, I see where real estate agents are going to go bye-bye. And I was ready to bite the head off of a nail. Like, you're nuts. As I see now with all this stuff that's going on, and I sit around and I think, well, he may be right. Right. Let's talk about housing affordability. Well, first of all, do we have any comments on that? I may have some agents that are commenting on it. If it's, I feel like buying a home is a scam. There's no way to know who's truthful. All the hidden costs, inflated insurance, property tax, seems like a huge gamble. It's not worth it at all. Whitney, I'm sorry. I really am. There are good agents out there, believe me. There really are. There truly are. And they advocate for you. They find out the information. They get it done. And they're stand up. They're forthright. There are great agents out there. This is not the whole industry at large. Unfortunately, when you have 1.5 million real estate agents and 74% of them don't have a clue because they haven't sold a house, it's very difficult because, we need more buyer education. And we need, you should be checking reviews. You should be checking references. I have a lot of people that have taken advantage of the list of buyer and seller agent questions. If you want them, if you're looking to buy a house or sell a house and you want to know what questions to ask, that's a long form. There's a lot of questions on there that I have that I recommend buyers and sellers. And you don't have to ask. You don't have to ask them every one that's on the form. But you should be able to look there. They're all very good questions and say, I'm going to ask them these 3, star 5, star 8 questions, or 20 or on each buyer or seller checklist. If you want it, you can send me an email. I will gladly email it to you for free. I'm not charging for it. Send me an email. I don't spam you either. I don't think there's not one person that signed up for to get these questions that can ever come on and say, well, you just arbitrarily added me to a list and is soliciting me. Now, I do, once you get it and you say thank you, I do say, do you want me to put you on my personal email list where I send out things that are valuable from time to time? Most of them say yes, but I never just copy and paste and put somebody on some email list. So don't send me an email that you don't check. Send me an email that's important to you because I don't spam you. Austin, thank you. Thank you so much. Would it make sense if the compensation portion of the listing agreement or listing agent agreement stated that, for example, selling agent receives 4% and any all cooperating buyer agents get a flat referral fee of, let's say, X? This is a good question. These are the comments. These are the conversations that you should be having with your seller. I tell you, Austin, what a lot of people are doing. A lot of agents are doing. I've seen very good agents have done this. They say, look, the seller is not opposed to paying a buyer agent commission, but ask for it. It's not coming from me. It's not coming from the broker. I think that's a straight up way. If you could say, you know what, if we could say, look, we can work this out, we can negotiate this, but I'm not going to play games. If my seller authorizes me to cooperate, I'm going to put that in a form that I'm not going to put in the MLS, but I'm going to send it to that agent that asked and say, yes, there is cooperation per my seller. He's authorized me to X amount of percent or X amount of dollars. Here's the form. God bless you. I'm not going to play games with you. Or the conversation to have is, look here, this is what I would like to get to list your house. And this is why. We can talk about it. But let's let the buyer agent or the buyer ask for it and then talk about that when that comes. And that way, the listing broker is in the clear. Is there cooperation from the listing brokerage? No, it's not. Seller's requesting and not opposed to paying, but the seller's requesting it with your buyer's offer. Now, what that does is that gives the seller the options. Here's the offer price. Here's the terms. Here's the contingencies or lack of. Here's what the buyer's asking you to pay their broker, or for compensation for the buyer to pay their broker. Or the buyer might say, I'll pay it myself. I think that was the intent of the Department of Justice coming with this ruling. I think that was the true intent, but it hasn't been expressed very well, at least to me. If you guys are brokers out there and you've been, taught otherwise, or your form says something different than what I just showed you, hey, maybe you're not dealing with the same frustration that I am. The idea is for transparency, not more paywalls. Because if we're putting still paywalls up and we're keeping the transparency from the buyers and the sellers, because what we don't want is an agent saying, that offer didn't exist. We don't want that to happen. How would the seller ever know? Unless the buyer went and knocked on the door. And let me tell you what happened. So I track these. When I have an offer that I give for a client, if we're turned down, a lot of times I'm asking, well, if a broker says or an agent says, and this is in the realtor ethics if you want to believe that, but it is. A lot of realtors are like, what? I don't have to tell you that. And it's like, well, then you signed that you're going to adhere to the National Association of Realtors ethics. And part of the ethics is this. All right. My client puts an offer in on a property at X broker. It's not my brokerage, not dual agency. It's a different broker. X brokerage. I say, John, my client wants to put an offer in. Oh, man, we got a lot of offers. Do you? Yes. Are any of them from you? Where you're double ending it? Or could be double ending it? That's what I'm getting at. Are any of the offers from you? But I'm thinking to myself, that's a good question. I don't have to tell you that. Well, you do. No, I don't. You do. It's part of your ethics. No, I don't. It's not for me. I don't have anybody. Nobody's, come to me saying they don't want representation, or if you're in a state where you do get to represent two parties, which I can't believe, but it happens, or an agent could actually, they can't represent one party, let alone now they're going to represent two. But I say to them, the next question, are any of them from your brokerage? Because that's part of the National Association of Realtors ethics. I forget what article it is, but it is. Why would you ask that question? Because I want to know, do you know the people? Is your agent friend in the office the one that has the buyer on the other side? I want to know if there's a possible violation there. Could there be? So one of the things that I do, and I encourage you to do, is you get an offer. Let's say the house is $500,000 and you put an offer in for $550,000 and you didn't do any inspections and you were cash, whatever, $550,000. And then all of a sudden you look at the closing date and you see $510,000 or $525,000. You're going, but I gave $550,000. What happened? I didn't have any contingencies. What happened? How come the seller took less? Thanks, Austin. It's a great question. Everything is negotiable. The fees should be negotiable. You should have the conversation with your clients. No one wants to work for free. I'm not working for free. Sometimes I feel like I do. We're entitled to make money. This is a business. We've got electricity bills and insurance, and no one wants it. A good client doesn't want you to work for free. But you should be having a conversation about what's fair, how much is going to be involved, what is your role, what are you going to do, what do I have to do? There are conversations that could happen. But there are probably buyers out there that won't look at a house that doesn't offer any buyer agent compensation. There probably are buyers that are out there that will strongly be opposed to that. So I have to tell my sellers that too. Let them ask, but if I give them a X amount of referral fee or whatever, and they're like, now buyer, you got to pay the rest. It may prevent that buyer contractually from moving forward with the transaction or the offer. So it could potentially cut down the amount of offers or the amount of the offer. So there's a lot, there's so many moving parts to this, guys. Do you think that the housing market, do you think the housing and market in California is going to crash? I personally think there's just too much demand, mostly due to the wildfires. We'll look at some of that here. We're in an affordability crisis. So, a lot of the country is crashing right now. I think we're all surprised that it's been propped up so much, and we haven't seen some type of foreclosure activity. Houses hit the market because of delinquencies or foreclosures, people being underwater. I mean, if you don't foreclose on people, or they can stay in a house for 10 years without paying a mortgage payment, where's their incentive to move? All right, we'll keep moving on here. Let's talk about California. Let's look first. I'm going to pull this up. This is the U.S. News, realestate.usnews.com. A pretty cool site. We've stuck all these links in the show notes. We can't go over the entire country, but we will take a look at some markets, and we'll get back to our poll here. First of all, let's pull that poll up. Here we go. All right. 386 votes. I wonder if you guys Googled it. Where do you believe the unhealthiest housing market is today? Let's take a look. So, does that screw things up when I widescreen that? No? All right, cool. This site is really cool. I like it a lot. It gives you year over year. A housing market index is really based on 100 being healthy. You see this top line here. And the reason why I guess we're not seeing a really healthy market, or the top line of going the other way, like 110, 120, 130. Mostly the housing market indexes have across the board have been sort of evaluated this way. If it's at 100 or better, that means that someone on a median salary can afford a median home. We've been going the other way, where we see, a lot of places are 5X, 8X, 10X, 11X median salaries to get a median priced home, especially when there really isn't a whole lot of inventory out there. But this is kind of cool. I would recommend you checking this site out. You can drop down all of your different markets across the country, covers a lot of them. And you can see that nationally, 66.6 is the national score. That's pretty bad. Year over year, nationally, it's declined. It's gotten worse, not better. It gives you housing demand, housing supply, and financial health of the market itself. So a lot of people said that Cape Coral, Fort Myers was the worst, and it is one of the worst. It's number 52 out of 57 in the rank index. It says that the financial health of the people, and again, 100 would be healthy. So 67.5 isn't saying a whole lot, but it's showing green here, I guess, in relative terms to everywhere else. 67.5. Housing supplies, 14.9. That is unhealthy. And housing demand is 34.1, which is healthy. But it goes through and it gives you unemployment, foreclosure rates of specific areas, rent to income ratios, consumer sentiment, housing supply, construction costs, and then permits and vacancy, rental vacancy rate. This is a 21.2, which means it's not a lot available. It's at the lower end, meaning if you need a place to rent, you're probably paying through the nose, because if it were up at 100, it would be healthy. If it was above that, it would be healthy. It would mean that the affordability is there. But this is cool. It's got housing permits tracker here. Can tell you, that specific market, index score over time. Is it, and a lot of what I do with clients here locally in Maryland, I can't do it in every market across the country, but I like to trend, markets, areas, subdivisions. Is the trend firecracker hot going up where things are selling over list price, or is the trend declining? That can happen in a submarket to a big market, right? So you could have if you're looking at a county, in that county, there could be submarkets in that county, like subdivisions or neighborhoods that are trending down or trending up. That's why it's very important when you're looking at properties and you're looking at houses, depending on what your needs and your goals are, is you need to know, is the market trending up or is it trending down? I mean, you can see here, Cape Coral Fort Myers is trending down. What that means is, if you're looking for a house, that matters. Because if you don't know an area is trending down in affordability or pricing, or that there's price declines probably close on the horizon, if you're not already seeing them, is you could make a decision and then 6 months from now realize it changed a lot. That market changed. The opposite is also true. If it's an area that's not impacted by, you have a lot of cash buyers, you have a lot of wealthy people, they want it, they're buying it anyway, doesn't matter what their age group is, they can afford to be there, and it's trending up. That's also a metric that you need to know, because that would tell you that you would need to make a decision sooner than later, because it could be more expensive. Even in a market crash, there will still be areas where people want to be and that won't be as affected as other areas. That happened in the '08 crisis. That's why it does pay to have a good agent that can do these types of analysis for you and kind of help you with your buying decision. But play around with this thing. It's really cool. I mean, I'm not endorsing them for any other reason. I mean, it even seems like it's a competitive site. I mean, you can find an agent on there. I don't know how they do that or whatever, but if you go up to the header, you can see. But I think that this site is way cool. It gives you all kinds of metrics here. It tells you how employment is, consumer sentiments, what's going on. So again, drop down here. If we go into Dallas-Fort Worth, it's a lot more healthier, 26 out of 57, so about midway through the country. That means that prices are coming down. So if you kind of think of this in a reverse metric, the higher the score isn't meaning that it's less affordable. It's meaning that it's more healthy or a weakening market to where affordability will start to improve. Okay. Any questions? Anybody requesting anything on this market indicator here? No? Okay. All right, let's look more on a macro scale. Now, this is the home price to income ratio, and these are the reasons why I believe we're headed for a meltdown. What this means, in looking at this chart, is that we have never been this unaffordable on median home prices to median income. I mean, this is leading up to the GFC. And what we're going to talk about next, and I get a lot of comments, you're such a perma bear, you're fear mongering, you're whatever. These are facts. You can choose to ignore them if you care to. The ones that are affected are not the wealthy. The wealthy seem to never be affected. The ones that are affected are the ones that are trying to aspire to get wealthy one day. Our middle class, our young population, these are the ones that we need to protect the most. So when you just comment that things will never crash, you have to look at a chart like this. It's clear to see we're in a bubble. Over 7, the ratio to home price to median income. That is not sustainable, folks. All these links, again, are in the show notes. You could spend some more time. I mean, we could have a show on each one of these things. Get the question a lot, how much do I need to earn? How much money do I need to make in order to be able to afford a house? It's a big question we get from a lot of buyers that need a mortgage. Like, what's it going to cost me? How much do I qualify? Do I make enough money? It's a cool chart here, kind of goes over it. They break it down also in this map here of the U.S. So, you can see in every state what kind of income, household income you need to buy a median priced home. There are caveats to this thing. Somewhere on here. It's based on, I think this is based on 10% down. I'd have to read through it again, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of these numbers, you have to read the fine details. Here you go, right here. That's what I thought. Here it is. These figures factor in property taxes and insurance and assume that you put 10% down. Now, who has that? Not most buyers. If you buy a $500,000 house, that's $50,000 down payment plus closing costs, probably another $10,000 or $12,000, $14,000. So you maybe to buy a $500,000 house, maybe you need $65,000 in cash for these salaries to be true. So you do have to analyze the details. I showed you in the beginning of the video, I don't even need these. I don't know why I have them still in my ears. In the beginning, I showed you a video how Maryland now, they're calling for a severe recession because of the amount of job cuts that are happening. Look, I don't want to get into the politics of this. And, it's such a hot debate. Let's just keep it simple and say, no matter who you are, if you lose your job, that's bad. Especially now, because most people operate on dual incomes. And man, they are one paycheck from complete disaster. Yes, probably even people in the government that are getting cut. We all have the propensity to spend more than what we should. I don't think anyone's immune to overspending. going out, doing something, taking that vacation, buying that car, buying whatever. You know, we all try and keep up with the Joneses. I say we all, not everybody tries to keep up with the Joneses, wants the next biggest house. If I have people that are making $300,000 a year as a combined income or $500,000 as a combined income, they're not saying, sell me that $250,000 house. They're saying, yeah, let's look at that $4 million house. So we're consumers here in the United States. So when we're talking about job loss, doesn't really matter. It's job loss. The more money people make, the worse position that they can be in, because what's happening now is salaries are going down, not up. I got a chart on that too. But we can see here in the last 3 years the difference on what's happening in unemployment. You know, a lot of this data, again, this is February 2025. You can go through here. There's all kinds of things that you can click on, right? As far as jobless claims, what they consider to be unemployed. If you've been unemployed for more than a year, you're not counted. You know, how many people have left the job? How many, or what are they calling full-time employment? I think it's like 34 hours now. 34 and a half hours is considered full-time employment for the government. That's hogwash. You know, no one's working a full-time job at 34. You may be working 34 hours, but you're getting paid for 40. I mean, if you think about 34 hours, that's like cutting a whole day's pay off, if that's what they're figuring full-time employment. But you can see unemployment is rising. We've always said that, you know, part of the black swan would be job loss. Across the board, job loss, unemployment. I've seen some crazy things on X where people are like, we're going to hit 20% unemployment. Who knows? I mean, that would be Great Depression numbers. If 1 in 5 was unemployed, that would be really, really bad. You know, I would hope that that doesn't happen, but could we see 10% employment like we saw back in the GFC? That would 1 in 10 unemployed, 15% unemployment. Man, that would be scary. And this is why. We've never been, I don't know what I thought, maybe it's the next one. We've never owed this much in debt. This is basically credit card debt here. Over $1 trillion. This column here, this is representing billions of dollars. So we're well over $1 trillion in consumer loans, primarily credit card debt in the U.S. That's big, guys. That's crazy. This is another awesome site here. Again, all these links are below. Look at this. A lot of data is backward-looking data, Q3, Q4, 24. I can tell you we probably haven't gotten in, you know, much better position, probably worse. But this site goes over a lot. This Fool.com. Key household debt statistics breaks it down. Look at this. The average HELOC, home equity line of credit that people took out on their house, $45,000 is the average HELOC. Man, if their house is worth $400,000, they took 10% of the equity of the total, not the equity of the total. Maybe the equity is $100,000. They took 50% of the equity. 40% of the equity out of their house, and they levered up. They leveraged up. That's revolving debt, guys. That's affected by the Fed rate being higher. That's not fixed rate. These people that got home equity lines of credit because their banks were salivating to get, not that long ago, we had a show on where we were talking about, oh, we're going to tap into America's home equity. We're going to give them a way that they can use the equity in their house to pay down credit card bills, to do all this stuff. They're switching debt for debt. This is revolving debt too. It's a second mortgage essentially on your house. We just had a situation where a seller was had reached out and said, look, our home equity lines of credit, like second mortgages, like, what do you mean? They're like, well, we didn't disclose it. We got a contract, and now all of a sudden we owe more money than the house, and we got a buyer that is upset because the buyer said, we should have disclosed that we owed this second mortgage, this HELOC. I'm like, yeah, well, of course the title company, yes. We just had a title attorney said that he's seeing where a lot of car dealerships are putting liens on your house. Go ahead, take the car. Take it. Yeah, it's 7% interest, whatever, take it. But sign this note right here. This is because you own your house, and they're like going to, they sell their house and they realize, man, I got this $40,000 auto loan on a lien on my house. They wanted to make sure that they were getting their money. That will blow a deal up if you don't have the money and you owe more than what the buyer is paying you. Deal's blown up. Now you have a buyer that's been harmed. They spent money on home inspections. They spent money on appraisals. They spent money on having their credit checked and, giving their lender fees. It's a cool chart to go through. I like this one. Total household debt by type. This tells you, look at this, man. Mortgage is green. Look at that. From 2003, for the last 22 years, mortgage has become the largest percentage ever of debt by consumers. Inflation and Americans' finances in 2025. The percentage of personal loans and auto loans in hardship. They're above 2020 levels when the pandemic hit. Credit card and auto loan delinquency rates have been on the rise since the second half of 2022. And are now at levels not seen since the 2008 recession. Something's missing here, guys. Record high New York Fed's quarterly household debt and credit survey shows the total consumer debt stands at $18 trillion. As of fourth quarter of 2024, that's a record high. This is sickening. Average revolving credit card balance at an average of 24.5% per year. Credit card interest rate, some of them are 30%. $6,380 a revolving credit card balance is one that persists between payments. In other words, is what people pay interest on. It's one of the most important figures when looking at credit card debt. The average credit card balance $6,380 as of third quarter 24 per TransUnion. It's up from $6,000 in the second quarter 23. 23 wasn't good. But consumers are in the best health, the best shape. Businesses have never been busier. The economy is soaring. Things are cruising along. You got people, look at this. Based on the data, the second quarter in 23, Gen X carries the highest average credit card balances. You're 50-something people. They're paying interest rates 24% in some cases, many cases, probably most cases, at $8,870 carryover per month. Gen Xers. While Gen Z carries the lowest average credit card balance with $3,148. Our 25-year-olds, our 26-year-olds, our 27-year-olds are carrying $3,000 worth of credit card debt from month to month. Credit card delinquency rate is at 8.8%. That's almost 1 in 10. You know what happens when you're behind in your credit card payment? Man, they really kick you in the teeth. That's when the whacking begins. That's when they raise your interest rate. That's when they hit you with penalties. Millennials, low-income borrowers, and Gen Z, to a lesser extent, were most responsible for the recent increase in delinquencies due to expensive auto payments and auto loans coming due. Mortgages make up 70% of Americans' consumer debt. Told you about the HELOC line of credit. Medical debt. According to Urban Institute, 13% of Americans, over 43 million people, had medical debt in collections in 2022. Again, these links are in the show notes. Remember early on, I was talking about that Inman article where they were saying that the government needed to step in and do something and make things more affordable and, you know, give them 40-year mortgages. And, I mean, all this stuff stinks. This is already what we're dealing with. Conventional, these are mortgage requirements, is Lending Tree. I'm sure a lot of you know who they are, lendingtree.com. Again, we're not being paid by any of these. I'm getting nothing but, to promote these people. They're not, just find it as good information, that they're good sites, they're good articles with, gathering, I try and gather as much. I could do a podcast on each one of these slides, on each one of these, dive into it deeper, but you have to do that. People already complain that my podcasts are too long. I don't think people know that there's a watch later or, pause. You don't have to watch it all in one sitting. Conventional FHA, VA, USDA. Here you go. Can't do much better than zero down payment like VA and USDA. Here's your minimum credit score requirements. Look at this, guys. You can now get an FHA loan with a 580 credit score, according to Lending Tree, with 3.5% down. 580. That's pretty low. You can get it for a 500 credit score. That means you're delinquent. You haven't paid your bills on time. You can buy a house. As long as your debt to income ratio falls under these numbers here, which is kind of like, I like how Mitch Vexler says kabuki theater. Sounds like kabuki theater. As long as your debt to income ratio stays. Mitch Vexler, by the way, was on a couple weeks ago talking about property taxes being unconstitutional, being taxed on unrealized gains. Got a couple slides here on property taxes. Show you what he's talking about. But anyway, your debt to income ratio can change. So the lenders will tell you, don't buy your car yet. I know you're riding a bicycle. Yeah, I know you need a car, but don't buy it yet because you won't qualify for your mortgage. Wait till after you get your house, then go buy the new car and really screw yourself. Personal savings rate. Gosh. In our lifetime, we never really experienced anything like the pandemic. But when you stimulate and you print money and you drop it out of helicopters over your people's houses, you pay people more than they made it work during a period of time. People are like, I didn't get my money. I didn't get it. You give PPP money out like mad. Now they're finding out there's a lot of fraud within that. I think they're coming after people. I never took any PPP, thank God. Always surprised me how real estate companies, I think a lot of real estate companies and contractors even got PPP money. And I'm like, but you were busier than you've ever been in your life. But there was a period of time where they were not going in people's houses. So I get that. Didn't last for very long, that aspect of it. But maybe some companies needed it. Their expenses needed it, and it was a way of saving the day. But my point is here, in looking at going back, all the way back to the 50s, nobody had money in their account like they did in the pandemic era of 2020. I guess this was another stimulus here. Around 21, people didn't have to pay their mortgages. They didn't have to pay. Of course, they were saving money in the bank. They didn't even have to pay their landlords. They didn't pay rent. But boy, look what happened. We went to one of the lowest times in history of savings after one of the best times in history of savings. This is proof that bailouts don't work, ladies and gentlemen. It is proof right here. Boom. And right now we have less personal savings other than the few short years here during the GFC than we've ever had, dating all the way back to the 50s. Wow. It's crazy. We'll just cruise real quick through here, then we'll take some questions. There's a slide here on insurance. You guys can check it out. What's the average insurance in America? The devil's in the details here as well, because you have to look at certain things here because factors matter. And some of the factors, I thought I had highlighted it here, but some of the factors where it's low, I'll give you an example. Like Hawaii is the lowest in the United States for insurance. But they don't offer protection against hurricanes. But they're the lowest insurance. But you can go through here, you can check it out. What's it going to cost you for insurance? Property taxes ballooning, causing sticker shock for homeowners. We know that. Counties in Florida, California, and Texas, 3 states that are continuing to see people move in and push up housing prices again, over 40%. I don't know when. They've doubled, not 40%. Have had property taxes rise over 30%. Here's a nice little chart here, metric. Since 2019, how much have property taxes gone up? In 2024, property taxes are a mixed blessing. A blessing. They're a mixed blessing. Your property taxes are a mixed blessing, ladies and gentlemen. It's not all bad. Because although taxes are one of those life requirements that no one likes, they're a good indicator of the health of the local housing market. Where's my barf bag? When housing prices go up, so do property taxes. Who wrote this? It should probably say that property taxes are a good indicator of stripping wealth from the American people, because the more they pay in taxes, the less they can put in their savings account. I would believe that. Property taxes are beginning to present a burden for homeowners. How can you say this in two different paragraphs that are together? At least make people turn the page. For example, in Florida, property taxes have increased by 9.5% per year since 2019, while home prices have shot up by 14.6% annually. By October of 2024, the median price for a single-family home in Florida jumped above the national average, hitting $393,500. North Carolina has also seen a boom in property taxes. They've outpaced their neighbors, South Carolina and Virginia, growing 13.9% annually. Right. Moving right along, 30-year fixed rate mortgages. This is what I said earlier. People were saying, oh my gosh, the mortgage rates are so high. No, they're not. They've gone back up compared to where they were, where home prices were priced in the 2 and 3% range. Now they've doubled. Yeah, it's unaffordable, averaging about 6.5% to 7% now on the national average. But you can see back here in 1980, but as a 40 or 50 year average, about 7.7% has been the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage. This is really interesting. We're not going to focus too deep on this because of time. But again, charts, everything's below, link below. Existing home sales and inventory remain low. These, you can expand these. It's kind of cool. You can look at these metrics. This is from JP Morgan Chase, who still believes that home prices are going to go up on average about, I think, 3% is what they say. 3% overall in 2025. The higher for longer interest rate backdrop is here to stay. This is the largest bankers in the freaking planet. So if they're saying they're here to stay, they're probably here to stay. This is an interesting chart talking about multifamily. A lot of people are freaked out. They invested in multifamily. During the pandemic boom, everybody, it was like a gold rush, like a mad gold rush. People were in, man, they didn't have their waders on. They were in their bare feet. They were even in their pants. I mean, it was just, they're just soaking up the water, trying to find a little piece of gold. And what they were doing was these operators were going, I have the everything. We're going to, we almost, they couldn't guarantee it, but we're almost guaranteeing you double digit interest rate returns. If you just invest with us, we're multifamily buyers, we're operators, we're buying up all of these apartments across America because the inventory is never going to hit, never going to get high. And we're going to keep raising rents because people can just pay it. And people are like, okay, where do I sign up? Here's my money. I have friends of mine that have done this, put hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars into these operators. And all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, they're having earnings calls. They need to raise more money. Guys, we're not making money. It wasn't what we expected. Financing has gone the other way. Our interest rates doubled. We're losing our shirts. We need more money from you, or we're going to liquidate the apartment asset at 30 cents on the dollar because we're bankrupt. This is multifamily through the years. Multifamily starts, under construction, and completed. See that line going up, that blue line right here? That's the completed. It's like skyrocketing. It's gone up. Their projects are done. These are also employing hundreds of thousands of people across the country in the construction business. This is where I'm seeing the biggest weakness in workers that are calling up saying, do you have any work? I was on this project, it's done, and now we can't find a job. At the same point in time, vacancy rates are climbing. Now, it's not as unhealthy in 06, 07 where people were buying homes instead of renting. but it's climbing. Vacancy rates are climbing. A lot of these multifamily operators are very concerned. This is Lance Lambert's chart here, Resi Club. Many of you that follow us have listened to him on our channel before. He's back in. We're podcasting tomorrow, I believe, for Saturday release. It's going to be very interesting getting his take. This is a guy that lives in this space. This is a chart. This is 1 year change in active housing inventory. You can see your state. He's got this broken down, man. You can't not appreciate the work this guy puts in. So there is inventory like in North Dakota that is year over year in the negative. But look at these numbers, guys. I mean, really, look at Florida, 34% year over year increase in inventory. You know, people said that up north it would never happen, right? I mean, New Hampshire, 20%, 26% Maine year over year, 25% increase in inventory in Texas, 44% in California, 41% in Arizona. Inventory is hitting the market. People are now starting to say it's coming. All right. Maryland, 33.8% year over year change. Now, it's still low, but it's headed up. We're not seeing it go the other way. So what that tells us is that more people want to sell than want to buy, or that the demand, the absorption may be happening, but it's outpacing the demand. We're seeing inventory sitting on the market for longer. Days on the market's rising. Not everywhere. Don't get excited. Not everywhere. But in a lot of areas. This is a great chart that's giving it to pre-pandemic levels, still showing that we're lacking that 4 million inventory number that we first covered in the beginning of the show. This is about Airbnbs right here. Short-term rental operators face fresh challenges as market matures. Some of the business challenges that they're having, there's more competition. Property maintenance, the most common issues including property maintenance, 33%. Higher operational expenses, 27% have reported that. Unexpected costs like damages, 25%. Profit-oriented hosts are particularly affected by unpredictable expenses, with 35% citing this as a major challenge compared to 17% of nonprofit-oriented hosts. The difference between a profit-oriented host and a nonprofit-oriented host, the nonprofit host says, well, I'm going to buy this place on the beach. I'm going to go down as many times as I can, but if I can offset it with helping to pay the bills. But the ones that are in the businesses, the short-term rental business to make money, 35% of them, over 1 in 3, are saying that they're having major challenges. Closures. Nearly 24% of current hosts have stopped renting out at least one property in the past year, either temporarily or permanently, and 10% of homeowners surveyed were lapsed short-term rental hosts. This is, look here. The primary reason for halting rentals are financial. 44% of hosts stopped because long-term rentals offered more stability, and 33% found them more profitable. So after they went and spent $35,000 in furniture for a short-term rental, they decided that they would rent it long-term, that they would actually make more money. 44% of the hosts went from short-term Airbnb to long-term rentals. However, not all closures were negative, as 34% of hosts stopped to make repairs or upgrades to the property, so they're spending more money. And in addition, 25% of hosts ceased operations due to regulatory changes. This next slide says it all, guys. 50%. Many Americans are spending 50% or more of their income on housing, new study finds. Again, all these links below for you. I hope you enjoy them. Let's go ahead and take some questions. Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much. Boomers still control politics. I think they will fight housing price declines because their greed overshadows affordability for their kids. You know, I think a lot of boomers are in the stock market too. The issue that I've always found with people saying that your home is your investment, and I have a lot of financial advisor people that I talk with, and I say to them, like, what's the balance? Like, most people don't have retirement accounts. Most people don't have stock accounts. Most Americans believe that the equity in their home is going to be what they need to retire on. The problem is they can't get the money out. So, yes, they probably will fight, to keep the values high. I don't know that they are going to be able to win because inventory is going to increase. But for someone to have all of their money in their house, what does that get them? A reverse mortgage where, they think they're going to leave it for their kids, but they're not, because by the time they're, they pass on or whatever, the mortgage company's going to come in and take the house in a reverse mortgage in a lot of cases. There won't be anything left, but their taxes are going up every year. Their affordability is going down every year. Their home repair costs are going up. So a lot of these retirees that are thinking that their assets in their house, it's preventing them from maybe a quality of lifestyle that they could have. They moved in with one of their kids. Austin, thank you again. Could you discuss behind the scenes of negotiating parts of a seller listing contract? Example, pricing, evaluation during the contract, length of time you find best for the contract, expectations based on initial price cut. Yeah. And Austin, if you send me an email too, if you want to dive deeper in that, I would be glad to have a conversation. Sounds like you are maybe considering selling, or maybe you're an agent and you're looking at, some tactics to do your client a better service. The listing contract, prices everything. So the problem with a lot of the houses that are sitting on the market is they're overpriced. Now, we could argue that all housing is overpriced. But a good agent is going to understand the first couple days on the market is key. When you get beyond those couple of days, it is crickets, ladies and gentlemen, in the nicest areas. You go do your open house. I think some of the best strategies I've seen agents do on the listing side, they'll list it on a Wednesday or a Friday. They'll have an open house on Saturday. They won't allow any showings. They'll convince their seller, look, listen to me. Don't do any showings. We'll list it on Wednesday. We'll get the frenzy going. We'll black out everything, on the showing schedule. They can't make any appointments until 11 o'clock Saturday when we have an open house, and everybody comes through at that point. Now they're looking around, man. They're pulling up the street. They're going, man, look at all these cars. My gosh, this thing is huge. This house is going to go. I mean, you get buyers almost like being at an auction. The offers start flowing in. Or you overprice it. That's knowing the market, pricing it slightly under the market, driving the exuberance. The seller ends up getting more than what they thought because the first 3 days or buyers can't control themselves. It's like giving them a bag of cotton candy. If the agent overprices the house or the seller says, well, let's just try it for 2 weeks. I know you're telling me 700, but I want to do 775 because that's what I think I can get. And the agent's going, well, I said 700, maybe 725 is where it should be. Let's go in at 700 and we'll get you the 775 because these buyers are like on a sugar high when they come in. But they say, nope, I want to be at 775. Okay, well, that's great. 775. Now it doesn't work. Nobody's there. A week later, nobody sees it. 2 showings. Agents don't get back to you. Crickets. You drop the price. You're chasing it now. You're chasing it. They're like, well, something must be wrong with that house because every house I've seen has been sold in 3 days. It's been on a market for 10. Something's wrong with it. You guys know what I'm talking about. You ever go on Zillow or Realtor.com and you see a house that's listed for $250,000 and you're like, that's me. Yeah, $250,000. And then it says auction. The auction date is April 4th through the 7th. This is the starting price. But it got your attention, didn't it? So, you don't want to be ridiculous. If you're an agent, you're underbidding a $500,000 house by $100,000. You're an idiot. You're doing your sellers a big injustice because you may not ever get to where it probably should be. So that's a lot of the price evaluation. Length of time you find it best for the contract. If it depends, a lot of it depends on whether the seller has a unique situation. Maybe we're looking at something that they have a really nice estate. There isn't a lot of demand. It's going to take time. It may be an international buyer. Then we may be talking about a listing agreement that lasts a year. And we may not sell it in a year because it's a unique, one of those unique properties. But I think that, certainly you could probably do it for as little as 3 months, 90 days. Because if it doesn't sell in 90 days, you're going to be looking at each other anyway. I mean, your agent really screwed up or we're in that much of a crash. But we're not there yet. So, a 3-month contract, probably adequate. I'm probably going to recommend 6 months just as a date to have. But, I mean, it's market specific. If you're in Florida, that's probably an agent may want a year, because the market's crashing. Houston, maybe they want a year. But I'm talking about, here locally for us in Maryland, look at what are the average days on the market for the price. So if you have a house that you're pricing it at a certain price point, see what your competition is, how long is the average days on the market in that market, that subdivision, try and be as granular as you can and, and then give them a little extra time in the contract. No one wants to go and spend money. And a lot of agents don't spend money. I'm still seeing where agents post pictures, you could clearly see that they did it on their cell phone, But if an agent's doing professional photography, 3D tours, drone photography, videos, paying social media boosting, they have a budget for advertising and marketing your property. That's out of pocket expense for them. You got to give them some time to recoup it. No one's going to do it in a day, or a 7-day contract. I wouldn't think. Expectations on the initial price, I think, was the last part of that one. A lot of it's going to, if it's not selling, you're going to drop the price. You're going to try and stimulate it. Some agents try and play games where they'll take it off the market, put it back on the market, give it a new MLS number, it recirculates all the way back through all of the aggregating sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, everywhere else. A savvy buyer or agent is going to say, seen that house before, or look at days on market collective, or look at the history and see that the agent played the game by taking it off and putting it on. If it's the same agent, you can also see if they took it off and put it on, it's a different agent. They fired their agent. We see that too. That's a reason for a house to come off the market and go back on. So thanks, Austin. Reach out if you have more questions. Aloha, thank you. The layoffs by DOGE affected primarily the probationary youth, not the boomers that for decades led us to this. Boomers really hate their kids. I really can't. I'm not a boomer. I'm a Gen X. I hate to think that my parents hated me. I don't think that is the case. But I do see where the youth are angry because the bulk of the wealth just so happens to be with the boomers. But things are a lot different, man. We had, not we, but the boomers, my parents, they had struggles too, but there were different opportunities. For crying out loud, they could afford a house at least. Most could afford a house on a salary. And they could afford to fix it and do things. And it's a bad time right now. This is a bad time. Jeffrey, thank you. Todd, thanks for your honesty. Appreciate you, Jeff. You're a frequent contributor to our comments, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Well, we thank you so much. We're right at that 2-hour mark, a little bit over. Again, look for us on your favorite social media and audio channel. We'll try and update these platforms as well as this YouTube channel. And I thank you for spending your time with us as always. And one of the biggest compliments you can do is share us with your family and friends. And we're an amazing online community. You guys are just the best ever. Wouldn't trade you for anything. So, yeah, we've got a couple other postings that come out this week. And next week we will talk about the DMV and directly relating to DOGE and government layoffs as we are tracking the progress of listings and price cuts and things like that in the area directly surrounding D.C., where most of the federal workers reside. A lot of the federal workers reside, including in D.C. We're bringing that every other week. So that will be next week, and we'll see you next time.
Sachs Realty, Maryland broker number 607720, office number 443-318-4514, equal house.